Okay, so for anybody who's coming in before Tuesday's class and maybe wants some more step-by-step instructions on the instructions for Quiz 1, this video I will post tonight. It's Friday. It's the 11th. I will try and post this in the next couple of hours here. And then also I'm going to go into detail on this as well in class on Tuesday. So step 1 in the instructions says make a new Pro Tools session in our Music 2071 folder. And there's a folder inside that called Quiz 1. So if Pro Tools is already open, it's already launched, which it is, right? Pro Tools has been launched already. We would go File, Create New. Or you can just choose, or you can just hold Apple, or that's what this symbol is, Apple or Command button. Hold Apple and press N. But we'll go Create New. Now if you boot Pro Tools up, if Pro Tools is not open and you launch it, it will automatically bring up this dialog box when Pro Tools first launches. But Pro Tools is already launched, so we have to go File, Create New. We're going to name it according to step 2, your name, Kevin, underscore date, 9/11/20, underscore quiz 1. Okay? And we're going to hit Create. So it created a new folder. Okay? Now it's asking us, what do we want to name the session? Well, it's already defaulting to the same thing we just called our folder, which is perfect. That's absolutely fine, and we're in Quiz 1. And if we look back, Fall 2020, Music 2071, Quiz 1, here's my folder that I just made, and the Pro Tools session, the .ptx file is the Pro Tools session. So there's the Pro Tools session I made. Inside the folder I just made, that's going to have all the information, all the data, all the audio, video, etc. that is associated with this Pro Tools session. So now we want to import the audio from the drum recording session. And I actually just went through and noticed that there's a couple audio files that we don't need, but I'll get to that in a second. So we're going to go File, Import, Audio. Or if you want to use the quick key, it's Shift Apple I. And since I already just went through this, this is the last place I imported audio from. This is the last location that I imported audio from, which just happens to be exactly where I want to be. But if you weren't in the right place, you would want to make sure you are. So we could go all the way back to our active drive, which is what we're recording on, 2020 Fall, Music 2071, Dvorak drum session, audio files, and boom, here's everything we want. Now, these invert 01, invert 02, invert 03, and if there are any more of those in there when you open this, you don't want to import those. So I'm going to select all of these, and then Command click or Apple click to select that one, but I don't want these inverted ones. And the reason is because these were newly created audio files, and I just didn't go through and delete them. So it says to add instead of copy, okay? And the reason is because these audio files already exist on the hard drive. I don't need to make a new copy of these audio files in my folder because it's already seeing them right here in the drum files or the drum section audio files. So if I were to click copy, it would actually make a new physical copy of all this audio in this folder, in the audio files folder of my Quiz 1 session. But it's just unnecessary because we're all going to be using the same audio files. So it's just going to look in the same place for them. So when we click, add, Pro Tools just knows, okay, I know where these audio files are. I'm going to look in that folder for them, but it knows that we're going to be using them in this new folder, in this new session. Now you can either choose to put them on a new track, or you can choose to put them in your clips list, which is over here. And then you would have to physically drag them into Pro Tools. So let's just make new tracks. And here we go. So now it just imported all of our audio, and it labeled them according to what the audio file is called. Now if you want, you can double click, and you can delete all this _03 stuff. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to. And if you want to reorder them, like I normally like to have kick, then snare, then the hi-hat, then the toms, then the overheads, and then rooms if I'm using them. So I like to reorder these. You don't have to, but so if you notice, all these tracks are highlighted right now. That's because Pro Tools just made brand new tracks, and so they're all selected technically. So if I command click or Apple click one of them, now this track is not selected. And the reason you don't even have to do that. You can just click on any one of these tracks here to select it. Because if all of these were selected, I can't move these tracks. If I only have one selected, well, now I can choose a track and move it, just like this. And it would not have let me do that while all these tracks were highlighted. In fact, whatever you have highlighted, if you start trying to move them, it's going to move all of them, right? So when all the tracks were highlighted, it's not going to let me do anything because it thinks that I want to move all these tracks and there's nowhere to move them to. So you have to select only one that you want to move, right? So by clicking in the timeline here, it selects that track. So, or you can just click on the track name. Kick 1, kick 2, snare top, snare bottom, hats, rack tom, floor tom, overheads, room. So that's the order I like to have. Now, so Connor played these 3 different styles, and they're not labeled in this session because we only imported the audio, right? If you remember. So the first is a swing type groove, then a Latin type groove, and then a funk type groove. Choose whichever one you want. If you want the swing, which is this first one, you can, if you want, just clear that other audio out. Or you can leave it. It's up to you. Doesn't matter. Now what we're going to do is start playing around with EQs and stuff. EQs, reverb, compression, panning. I like to pan the drums kind of how, if I was the drummer, if I was sitting there, you know, the snare drum is a little bit to my left, not a lot, but a little bit to the left, you know. The hi-hat's a little further to the left maybe. The rack tom is kind of a little to my left, but not as much as the snare and the hat, right? Floor tom's kind of on my right-ish, and then the overheads and the rooms I leave panned left and right. So that's kind of a starting point I like for the panning. Your inserts up here, you can assign whatever EQs and compressors you want. If you want to make a reverb, what I suggest is at the very end of your session, make a stereo, and so that's file, track, new, and then it defaults to this mono audio track, right? We want to make a stereo aux input because we don't want to record, or we don't have any audio to put on here. We're going to send audio to this auxiliary track, right? And here I would put a reverb plugin on, and you can use whatever you want. Altiverb's a pretty amazing reverb plugin, just FYI. So there's our reverb, and what we would also want to do, so once, say you've got your mix going, everything's mixed, and you're ready to do the last step. Sorry, let me back up. Step 6, check for phase cancellation, right? So the kick, we've got 2 mics. We've got 2 mics on the same source. Snare, we've got 2 mics on the same source. The overheads are 2 mics on the same source, and so are the rooms. So to check for phase, for instance, if I was going to check the phase between kick 1, the first kick mic and the second kick mic, I would choose an EQ, and I like to just pick this Q1, right? And I'm not actually going to EQ it. All I want to do is press this circle with the line through it button. That's the sign for phase reversal, right? So I would be listening to it, and I would click that button to flip the phase on one of those kick mics. And if it sounds worse, then we put it back in, and we can turn this EQ off. If it sounds better, then these 2 kick mics were out of phase with each other, and we want to invert the phase on one of these. So I would check it for the kick. I would check it for the snare. When we made new tracks, when we imported the audio and told it to make new tracks, Pro Tools automatically made the overheads and the rooms stereo tracks. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, just to make things easier, that the one instance where the phase does need to be reversed, it's not on the overheads and it's not in the rooms. So you don't need to worry about testing the phase on these 2 tracks. But the last thing, to print the track, we're going to make a new, and again, that's go to track, new, a new stereo audio track. And if you see all our tracks here, everything's going out 1 and 2. 1 and 2 out of Pro Tools are going physically to the left channel and the right channel of our speakers. But I want to actually record my mix onto this track so that my mix exists as a left and right stereo track inside of my Pro Tools session. And the way I do that is I need to change the output of all these. I need to reroute all of these channels, all these tracks, to go to this last track. Okay? And in fact, I'm going to call this 2-track. So this row here are your channel inputs, and this row here is your channel outputs. So I want my final mix here to go out 1 and 2, but I want all of these, so I'm going to select all of these, and I want all of these to go, I want these all to be routed to this stereo track. And that's called busing. A bus is an internal routing source, so it's being routed but within Pro Tools. We're not going outside the computer, this is all internal. So whereas output 1 and 2, this is actually physically leaving the computer and going to our speakers. If we want to route something internally, we need to go to a bus. And so we can change all of them all at one time by holding Shift and Option. And then I'm just going to choose, here I've got one already called PB, which is what here, 2-track, perfect. I've got one called 2-track, so I hold Shift Option and it changes all the outputs of these tracks I selected to this bus that's already called 2-track. And I'm going to set the input of this one to receive whatever's coming in from 2-track is coming in here now. Okay? Now, if I press play, see how nothing's there's no meter here? Nothing's coming up. That's because we're not monitoring this channel. I either need to be monitoring the input, where when I hold this cursor over here, you can see it says track input monitor. So as soon as I press that, now I'm monitoring the input, I for input. I'm monitoring the input of this track now. And if I unmute my speakers, we can hear it. Now if I want to record, I have to click this record button. Now the track is what we call armed. The track is armed, right? And I just hit, the quickest way to record is either the number 3 on the number pad, on the keypad, or hold Apple and press spacebar. And now you're recording. If I turn my speakers up, we'll hear some. So then just record your whole mix onto this track. Okay? Once you're done, you can take it out of record. We can name it something if we want. You can name it, I can name it Kevin Mix, right? So now my audio file, you see it just changed the name of this audio file to Kevin Mix. And now I want to export that into the bounced files folder associated with this session, right? So I select the audio, I highlight the audio, and I go File, Export, Selected Tracks. Nope. Scratch that. Clip. Sorry, I always use the quick keys for this, so I don't, this particular one, I don't know where it's located, to be honest. Okay, but rather than waste any more time, the quick key to export audio is you hold Shift, Command, K, and it chooses Export Selected. We want to export it as a wave, interleaved, 16-bit, 44.1, and we're going to choose, right? Now we got to tell it where to bounce to. So we want to go Active, 2020 Fall, Music 2071, Quiz 1, and here's my folder for Quiz 1, and I'm going to save it to the Bounce Files folder, and just click Open. Now it's saying the destination is Active, 2020 Fall, Music 2071, etc., Kevin, Quiz 1, Bounced Files, Export. Now, the last thing, and I don't know if I ever mentioned this in class because I've seen a couple people, looks like they haven't done this yet. Always save. Save your session, right? Then close your session. Close. So now, if I go back to our folder, you can see here's my folder with all of my Pro Tools session data. Here's my Pro Tools file, the session file itself. And inside of Bounced Files is the mix I just made. And in Audio Files, all that exists there is that new print that I made called Kevin Mix, because the audio, we just added it to that session. We didn't copy it. So the audio still only exists in this original drum session from when we recorded in Dvorak. So this went a lot longer than I expected, but I hope that was helpful. And as always, contact me if you have any questions or issues.